Lanre Arogundade. I'm a journalist. I run the International Press Center, and I'm the author of Fela, Yesterday's Message as Today's Reality. A small booklet.
To celebrate Fela again, as it is annually. So, what is that one or few things that you wish Fela accomplished before he departed the earthly to be in the ancestral?
Fela had said that he would write his memoir at the age of 60. But people they looked at his life, they knew he was being attacked by the state. I think in 1992 or so, he was beaten to a state of complete stupor, and people they actually thought that Fela had died. They threw him from upstairs, beat him mercilessly, and left him for dead. So there was always that fear that something would happen to Fela. So that journalists were always asking him, your story from yourself. And he said, when he's 60, he will write his memoir, and then he died at 59. So I think that's one thing that I felt, he should have accomplished. But then, in a sense, his memoir is also written. It's written in his music, it's written in his works, it's written in his interviews, to the extent that generations that never saw him live, never saw him perform, are able to replicate his music. And that was what we saw in Fela Broadway. So sometimes it's not about what you wish, but it's for us to accept, the reality of what his life was and what it continues to mean to us. Yes, he was appreciated, but also don't forget that Fela came at a time when we didn't have this advantage of information technologies. In those days, if you wanted to see Fela perform, you would have to go to the African Shrine. Fela's live performances were few and in between. He chose his performances, but things have changed. With the advent of technology, multimedia, generations, people are able to now see Fela, listen to his music in different forms. And so for me, I think it has expanded the scope of acceptability. I think when he was alive, he was appreciated, and you saw that on the day of his burial, when millions of youths decided to march with his corpse down to this place for his burial. The whole idea had been that after the line is stayed at Tafawa Balewa Square, they will put the body in an ambulance, and the guys just said, no, this is our man, that look, and then they carried the body. You could just imagine that distance all the way from TBS. So I think it was appreciated when he was alive. Why we feel that it's more appreciated now is because of continued failure of governance and the continued relevance of his song. So that if you listen to this one, you will think it's singing of the current government. So I feel that we should be grateful that he didn't just have that music, he also had that prophetic vision. He spoke to our yesterday, and he's speaking to our today, and in fact, he's also speaking to our future.